Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation, Power Apps using Azure SQL Database as a backend. I'm Keith Atherton, Power Platform Solution Architect, Microsoft MVP and Microsoft Certified Trainer with over 20 years industry experience based in Edinburgh in Scotland. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or X. Azure Back to School is an awesome event and I'm proud to be back again this year. Thanks go to Captain Hyperscaler and Trace3 for sponsoring this event. I'd also like to thank Dwayne Natwick and Derek Smith for organising it. Please check out the other brilliant sessions at azurebacktoschool.com. Okay, let's get started. So, what is the Power Platform and what are Power Apps? The Power Platform is a collection of low-code and no-code tools and services provided by Microsoft. If we scroll down on the page, we can see a bit more info, such as the products that are used as part of the platform. So first up, we've got Power BI, which is great for reports and dashboards. Power Apps, which we'll look at today, and as it sounds, it's great for creating apps. Power Automate, which is good for behind-the-scenes automations, things like connecting with other systems, sending emails and notifications, and so on. Power Pages, which is great for creating external websites, and Copilot Studio, which is great for creating custom chatbots. Now, just before we look into Azure SQL Database, we'll discuss something called Dataverse. The Power Platform actually provides a data platform called Dataverse, which, like the rest of the Power Platform, is built on Azure services. Dataverse provides excellent data storage and services for the Power Platform, but there may be times when you want to use a different data platform, such as Azure SQL Database, for reasons of cost effectiveness, being able to fine-tune performance, or that it's the data platform already in use at your organization, and you've got a team who are familiar with it. Now, with that in mind, let's create a Power App to use Azure SQL Database as a backend. First up, let's start with creating the Azure SQL Database backend. If you don't have one created already, I want something to experiment with, I would recommend checking out this free offering from Microsoft. As you can see, it's in preview and there are limits, but it's a great option if you want to get started with a database for free. To save time, I've gone ahead and created an Azure SQL database with a public endpoint and added some sample data, our old favorite AdventureWorks. So right here, I've got the main overview page that we can see. Now, if I go over to the query editor, which is in preview, we can see that we've got some tables. If I go ahead and query the customer table right here, let's get a few rows back. There we go, we can see a few entries right there. We can see we've also got some views and some stored procedures as well. Right, let's go ahead and create a Power App that uses this Azure SQL database as the data source. Now, there are a few ways of doing this. We can create a blank app from scratch and go ahead and manually create this connection and connect everything with Azure SQL Database. There are some ways that maybe make life a little easier as well. So one of them right here is start with data. If I go ahead and select this, scroll down here to select external data. Across the top we can choose from SQL. And then once it's loaded, there's a way we can actually go ahead, add a new connection and connect to our SQL database. But I'm going to cancel that for now. Option number 2 right here, we can start with the page design. We can choose to use a gallery connected to external data. Now, just some context, a gallery is a control that can show almost like a list view or a table view. So if that's a common use case for line of business apps, it's almost giving us that starting point to say, hey, you probably want a gallery. Let's go ahead and select that, choose from SQL again, and it'll actually connect the table or data source or view to actually display it within the gallery itself. And again, we'd create the new connection and go through that way to give us that UI as a starting point. But again, we won't go for that just now, we'll cancel there. And one other option that we have is this third one right here, start with an app template. So we can go up there to from SQL. Again, there were other templates in there as well, but we can also choose this option to go ahead, add a new connection, and connect to that SQL Server data source. But again, I'll go ahead and cancel that for now. Okay, so the one we're actually going to go ahead and use is the start with data. Scroll down, select external data, and scroll back up so we can get to from SQL. We'll go ahead and add a new connection. Now we're going to get the kind of standard SQL Server connection string type details right here. So we've got authentication type. Now this one I've actually got some credentials that I can go ahead and use. So I do SQL Server authentication in this case. Again, it may be different if you want to use Entra or some other option. Now the SQL Server name, if I scroll down here, I'm actually going to go back to the tab where I've got the overview for the SQL Server. Right here we've got server name. I'll go ahead and copy this, paste that there. Now we need the SQL database name. Let's go right back here. Again, I can actually see it's right there up in the overview. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that. And then I've got some credentials that I'm actually going to go ahead and just pop in here. Now the last thing we don't need to enter, this is a gateway. If we were using SQL Server on-prem, which we can, there's a way of setting up a gateway, which is something we'd install on our own network, so we can actually manage this cloud traffic from the Power App to the on-prem network right there. We're not doing that in this case. We're actually going to use Azure SQL Database, so we won't bother setting anything there. We'll go ahead and create. Great. Okay, so now we can see already the connection has worked, and we've actually got a list of the tables that we can see right away. And there's our friend, the customer table that we saw before, but we also have other tables coming through as well, and some views right there. So I'm going to go back up. Let's stick with customer then. We'll go ahead and select that and create app. Great, so this shouldn't take too long to load. This is, again, just going to give us a starting point with that connection that we connected to. It's going to give us a fairly standard responsive UI, again, as a starting point, but this is something we can totally change. So this main canvas in the middle of the screen is actually the app canvas. We can see on the left it's called main screen 1. It's the only screen we have. We can create multiple screens if we so wish. If we actually select one of these items right here, I don't know, maybe just there, we can see in the tree view on the left, we can actually see all these different controls. There are a lot of containers in use. This is good for the responsive design, but we can actually see things I mentioned before. This was the gallery, and this is really like a repeating control. So it's given us a list, and again, it can give us a table type view as well to see all of those records. When we're on here, I mean, some things I'm not quite sure if we'd show them on a form for a production app, but we can see fields coming through on this form right here. So the main structure of the app is really we've got a header at the top. On the left, we've actually got a search bar and a gallery of all the existing records. A button that lets us create and add a new record. On the right hand side, we've got a bar here where we can edit the current selected record, and we can actually delete it as well. So if I go ahead and preview this app, so just kind of give this a play, we can actually scroll through, see all these records showing on the left hand side, and let's see if we can search for something. There we go. So we can see locks coming up just there. Let's go ahead and cancel that. And again, we've got the buttons and options to go ahead and do other features as well if we wish. Now if we go over to the left hand side, we're actually on the tree view there showing the screens and components. If we go a bit further down to this data tab right here, we can see this was that customer table that we connected. So we can see that's the only one we've got coming through. However, if we do need to add more, we can actually go ahead, search for SQL. Again, these are all the different connectors that we have available. I've just searched for SQL there. Go ahead to SQL Server. Let's select that one that we have connected. And then what we've got on the right hand side are all the different tables that are available. And if we go to the right hand side, we can actually access the stored procedures as well. Now this is quite useful. Stored procedures, of course, it might let us do extra kind of filtering or validation or other features other than just direct to the table or view. I should say as well that the stored procedure ability did come in to generally available fairly recently as well. Before that, we just had the access to the tables and views. So this is a welcome addition that gives us a direct connection to stored procedures if we need. I'll go ahead and cancel that right now. So one other thing that I would mention is, again, before we had this direct access to stored procedures, which I know is a common use case with SQL Server, and it may be in place with existing Power Apps as well, and it still does work, is really by using Power Automate. So if I go to Power Automate, there's a way where Power App can call a Power Automate Cloud Flow. And within this cloud flow, we can actually call the stored procedure and return the results back to the Power App. Again, there's not as much need these days because we've got the direct connection, but it's just worth covering here just to show that it's possible as well. So the way we might do this, we can actually go ahead and create a blank cloud flow and actually perform the work to say call stored procedure, pass in any parameters that we might have, and then return the results to the Power App. Also, the other option that's very good in Power Automate is the use of templates. So there are some templates that already exist. Let me just do a search for these that actually have connections to stored procedures as well. So if, for example, I was actually going to use this one here, execute a SQL stored procedure on the Power Apps button, click, and actually return the results back to the Power App. So again, something really, really useful if this was a common use case. You can either create it from blank or you can use one of these templates to save you some time. So that's a very brief overview. I hope that's been useful. If you are interested in getting started with Power Apps, it may be that your organization already has licenses already. If your organization already has Microsoft 365 E5 licenses, there may be others as well that actually come with Power Apps standard licensing, so you're actually able to use them right away. If you want to use them personally as well outside of work, there are many free trials. If I just scroll down here, we can see Power BI, Power Automate, and so on. Now, one good thing I would say with the Power App one, which again is one of my favorite parts of the platform, is there's something called the Power Apps Developer Plan, which you can actually click there to get started and sign up for. Now, the good thing with this free trial is there are no time limits as well. It's not a 30-day or a 60-day thing. You've just got this for good. You can keep using it. It does come with Power Apps, the use of Dataverse, and Power Automate as well, so you can play with lots of the toys. So yeah, I would highly recommend using this to get started with if you want to do that personally and get familiar with it. Okay, we've reached the end. Again, if you have any questions, I'm always happy to help. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or X. Thank you for your time and take care.